So when I say being present and aware, it's not to look for, is it working? Is it happening right now? It's just a noticing. It's an awareness. And so, for instance, I like to start with telling people to pick a color for the day and just notice how many times you see that color, because it turns your conscious mind on so that you're actually being more present and aware. But it also gets you out of the whole worry, fear, doubt mode of, is it working? Is it working? Is it working? Because it gets nuanced, and you can get yourself caught up in looking for, is it working? What we want to look for is more so of like, it's working and I trust it's unfolding, not is it working and I'm so attached to it that I'm actually repelling it away from me. That's where it gets nuanced. And so you want to be in a very detached state where you're not so attached to the result that you desire.
Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Young. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology, so channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show. Hello, a quick note before we begin today's episode. I wanted to let you know about a mastermind that I am hosting for 15 women, and it begins March 13th and it will run for 5 weeks. We will meet once a week on Zoom, and you will receive some hot seat coaching from me with any issues that you may have come up for you that week or in your life, whatever you wish. It's I wanted to keep it intimate, so only allowing 15 women to come in, and it's just something that I felt the need to do. Now, if you're wondering if there's a theme, not really, but if I were to pick anything that comes to my mind in terms of what these discussions are going to be about, I would say what my goal is for these women is to gain clarity around some sort of issue they're having in their life that's causing them a lot of indecisiveness. So getting clarity is, I would say, the big theme. Now, it could be with relationships, it could be with careers. Anybody who's being challenged in this way will definitely benefit from this mastermind. But honestly, any topic is going to be fine. And you are also going to have access to a group chat that's going to, be open for the 5 weeks, where you can drop a question and it will be answered either by myself or other women in the group who will be supporting you. I'm excited about it. It starts March 13th, and just message me, get a hold of me if you have any further questions, but I would love you to join. Okay. And with that, let's begin the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I Think I Can podcast. And today I'd like to welcome Casandra Austin-McDonald. She is a mentor and a coach. And I'm going to start off by just asking Cassandra how she got into the space she is right now.
Well, thank you so much, Luella, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And when you mentioned that was going to be the first question, I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I already know its story.
Okay, perfect.
It's interesting because I got into this work while I was in my former professional career, which was working with juvenile and adult offenders. And at the time, I was working with juvenile offenders and I was facilitating a group. And I believe this group was called Forgiveness and Healing. And one of the kids raised their hand and said, Miss Cassandra, how did you do this? How did you forgive someone? And I kind of froze for a minute because I was like, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't think I really have. And I realized I had been educated and I had been professionally trained to help other people, but I had not done the work for myself. And I felt so deeply convicted by that. Like it stuck with me. And at the time I kind of deflected and did what we were trained to do. Well, we're not here to talk about me today. We're here to talk about you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it planted a huge seed with me about how I needed to do this type of work for myself. And I ended up taking the workbooks home and I started doing the work for myself. And then it unraveled from there. It turned into me going to seminars and retreats and hiring coaches and mentors. And it just snowballed into this thing. And all of a sudden, people were coming up to me, asking me what was I doing, the work that I was doing. They could tell that I had been transforming. I had started off speaking to youth at the time because I realized that I was experiencing transformation and I wanted to share that with them. I felt, man, if they could get this information that I got, and if I had this information at their age, I could have been Michelle Obama.
Yeah, exactly.
But from there, it led to the mothers and the aunties and the grandmothers of those children asking me about the work I was facilitating with them. And it just unraveled from there. And that was how I became a coach, was I realized I needed to do the work first.
And you mentioned a good point. It's not like any of us could not be one of these women that we look up to so much right now. Yeah. It's just like a bit of a different path, but we're the same as they are. Yeah. And yeah, we have the same gifts, but a lot of us don't always recognize the gifts that we have. So on that topic, is this something that you see? First of all, is this something that you see in yourself? And is this something that you can bring to others that don't see this in themselves?
Oh, for sure. Self-image work has been a huge pillar in my work, is helping women to see their power, to see who they are, to see their worth, their value, their gifts, their talents, because I didn't see my own. And so I know how it feels to be in that void where you're navigating this. Like I have all this head knowledge, but it's not connected in my heart and my soul and my spirit. And so for sure, I love doing self-image work with other women.
Okay. And what would you say in the recent year or two, do you realize what gifts you have that, and I think you know what I'm talking about, but it's sort of like it comes very easy to you, but it might not come easy to others, and you recognize that now, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like this is just like a non-option for me. Like it's just the way I think. It's super easy, but you realize that other women struggle with it. What would that be? What's your gifts?
Oh my gosh. Like, I feel like all the thoughts are going.
Good.
For sure. When I feel deeply passionate and convicted about something, I have this way of like transmuting that, whether if it's through speaking or writing or coaching, and it activates people. And so activating other people's power is definitely one of my gifts. And the way that I can transmute a message through my speaking and writing is for sure a gift. It really resonates with people in such a way where I've heard people say, like, I wasn't thinking about it this way. I wasn't considering this, or you said something that ignited something within me. And then also I have this unapologetic approach about me first. Like, I come first, because I know if I'm no good, I'm no good as a wife, I'm no good as a mother, I'm no good as a leader, a coach, whatever roles I'm playing. And so I'm really unapologetic about that. And I've really been able to effortlessly share and show women how to do that in different ways, whether if it's through, I call it having sacred practices, where you're spending time with God and yourself on a day-to-day basis, and you're pouring into yourself so that your own cup is full and overflowing, so that what's in the cup is for you, and the overflow is what you pour and serve and give to everyone else.
Did you always have that? Like, did you always
God,
practice?
no.
Okay.
Heck no. I was the oldest growing up. And so I was the one in this dysfunctional household that was like the mother as a child, taking care of everyone else. And then I got pregnant with my son at 19. And so for a big part of my life, all I knew was taking care of other people. Taking care of myself was very foreign.
So how did you finally, well, first of all, 19 and a child, that must have came a lot later in your life then.
Yeah, it was in my 20s as I was navigating being a single mother, and I reflected on my childhood and what my mother modeled in front of me, which was not self-care or taking care of herself. And I realized that if I don't take this on for myself, I may end up like her, which was not what I wanted.
No.
And so it was really me analyzing what I saw growing up and knowing that's not what I want, and figuring out what I do want and shifting down that direction.
Okay. So, when did this happen then? Like, what transmuted from like 19 in a baby and 5 years after that, 10 years after that? Like, when did your like sort of transformation occur?
It started when I was pregnant with him.
Oh.
I realized that I went to a campus counselor at the time, and we're talking over 2 decades ago. I'm not trying to tell my age here.
No. All good.
Before this was a trend. And I know you get it, because trauma work and healing has become such a trend now, which I have thought about that. But I went to a campus counselor, and I wanted to understand how I attracted a relationship into my life that reminded me of my parents. And I was so intentional when I left home at 16 that I would not have anything like them. And I could not understand what happened. I wanted to know what happened. How did this happen? And that's when I learned of trauma bonds. And so for me, it started very young, this work, because I didn't even know, even before the story about the juveniles and working with them. I actually started, if I'm honest with myself, at 19 when I went to a college campus counselor and wanted to know, how did I attract this relationship into my life?
That is so interesting. In the sense that, I mean, it's so true. You're right. Like I do see that all the time, and in myself as well. Of course, it's how the subconscious just hijacks, your life. It's sort of like, okay, I intentionally did not want to do this, and yet here I am. So where did I go wrong? So what were the words that campus counselor told you that really made it stick for you?
She planted the seeds that caused me to later want to do the work when that kid asked me about forgiveness and healing. She asked me what was my relationship like with my father. And I was completely unavailable at the time to discuss that. I was like, what's that have to do with anything? That has nothing to do with, I had no understanding of what I know now. I just knew I'm in this situation. I want to know how it happened. I wasn't connecting the dots.
Right.
But that seed was planted. And so 5-6 years later, when I'm working with juvenile offenders and this kid asked me about forgiveness and healing, it was like the light bulb went on where, oh, that's what she was talking about. And so I knew I was holding resentment towards my son's father because I was holding resentment towards my father. And that's what started this whole, you've got to do the work for real.
Makes a lot of sense. You went into that relationship with, sort of a mistrust right from the beginning. And that energy, that frequency attracted a similar situation to come to you. Yeah. So that's when you realized you had to shift your energy. So what did you do while pregnant with your son in order to shift that energy then?
Well, I started with nutrition, ironically. And so it's been almost 20 years since I've had beef or pork. And I went down this holistic path of like, well, let me just work on my well-being. I was a Division I track athlete. Also, when I got pregnant with him, it was the easiest thing I could think of was like, let me work on my well-being. And so it really just started with me thinking, well, if I just take good care of myself and I feel good about myself, maybe I won't make this choice again.
Yeah. No, it makes it makes sense. It's sort of like a holistic approach. Like, I mean, yeah, and you know what? I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of how, like, I'm just thinking of like a lot of, especially women, I think, when they feel like their external environment is something that they can't control, they know that they can control their bodies, right? And we also see that with eating disorders, anorexia, for example. One of the reasons that these women, suffer from that eating disorder is that this is one thing in their life that they feel that they can control is the food that they're taking into their bodies. So, but I like that. I like baby steps. I know I can control my health, the food I put in my body, the way I exercise. So let's start there.
Yeah. Beautiful. And again, this was me doing the opposite of what I saw my mother doing. And so that was almost like my blueprint, but in reverse, where I figured, well, I'm just going to do the opposite of everything she did. And maybe that will help me get different results. And it started with that. And eventually, obviously, I did not stay with his dad. And so that was the next step of building the courage and the confidence to say, I'm going to be a single mom. And it was very challenging because at the time, it still was not a very popular or even respected thing. I got a lot of flack from family and friends, and it was very challenging choosing myself during a time where everyone was still advocating for you make this work no matter what, because there's a child involved. Whereas my perspective was, if it's not healthy for me, it's not healthy for him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what transpired after that?
Well, my son's father kind of gave me an ultimatum and gave me 24 hours notice that he was moving across the country. And I knew at that time that I could follow him or I could choose a different path. And I chose to go back to my hometown, which is where I ended up working with the juvenile and adult offenders. And that was when my world unraveled. It wasn't shortly after me moving back home, the kid asking me about forgiveness. I'm back in the same environment I thought I would never live back in. And it was like a gift in disguise of, now let's really do the work. Let's do the root work of how you got here so that this never happens again.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now you're a single mom. And the dad didn't care that you were not going across the country with him?
So he kind of used some financial manipulation.
Okay.
And so there was a period of time where he wasn't financially supporting, and there was arrears and child support that was due, because he kind of would hold that over my head. Well, you should just move down to Florida. And I was like, no, I'm not following you. I'm not your wife. Why would I do that?
Okay.
So it was challenging because for quite some time, the sole financial burden was on myself. All of the everything. I did everything. I made sure my son got into the best schools. I was really on it with his education, all the spiritual, emotional, mental well-being, like everything was on me.
Okay. Okay. So fast forward, from there to now, what are some pivotal points in your life that I guess maybe directed you more and more towards coaching and mentorship? I mean, did you do anything in between? What you're doing now and um, working with the youth?
Well, I started with the youth, but eventually it led to full blown working with women. It didn't
Okay.
take long. I spoke at
Okay.
a few centers with youth, and it didn't take long before women were hearing what I was talking about. And they would ask, like, well, can you come speak at our event? Or I was invited to go speak at women's empowerment events. And I was asked if I was a coach, could I help them? And it just unraveled from there. It was not something I thought was going to be a thing, but it turned into a thing. And
Right.
eventually I realized I have a calling.
Yes. Nice. Okay. So then what? Did you stay in that state? Did you move out? Like what?
The most beautiful thing happened. I manifested my husband who
Ah,
moved from Florida to Illinois for his career. And I always said, well, God sent you to Florida or from Florida to Illinois to come get me.
right. Okay.
So the very state my son's father was in, my husband moved.
Exactly. Exactly. Wow. Okay. So explain to the audience when you say you manifested your husband, like, I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
what does that mean?
So manifestation really is to make something real. And I had a desire to have a life partner. And so there was a period of time after I had done a lot of deep inner healing work and self-love work and self-worth work where I started to admit to myself I had this desire for a partner. And so I became very intentional about how I was dating. And I started dating intuitively. I was practicing abstinence for a time because I realized that if I had sex with someone, that my feelings may get involved, and then that could skew my perception. So I became very intentional with the way in which I was dating. And what happened is I started to deepen my self-trust in such a powerful way because I could see through the glitz and the glamour. It didn't matter what their career was or how much money they made. I could see through it. And I was like, they're not the one. And I felt it and I trusted it. And so by the time I met my husband, it was interesting because I was invited to an event with a college or a childhood friend of mine, and she was the only person I knew at this event. And the event was for her colleagues who was throwing a birthday party for one of the lady's husband. And it was a whole bunch of engineers there. And my husband's an engineer. And so I'm going to this event. I don't know anyone there. The day before, I had just gotten back home from a flight of getting my son from Florida, spending time with his dad's side of the family. I was frustrated with his dad because of co-parenting. And the next day I go to this event and I really didn't want to go.
No.
I did not want to go. But my friend invited me and I told her I would. So I did. And I remember the first time I saw my husband, I felt something on the inside. I was like, who is that? I just felt something and I had never felt that before. And I was like, who is that? And we connected and we sat at this same round table and we started conversing with each other back and forth. And in the conversation, I realized we were connecting and there was this empty seat beside me. And so I patted the seat and I said, why don't you come sit over here by me? And he
Good
did.
for you.
And it unfolded from there. He's been calling me every day since.
Oh, and I know why. I know how he fell in love with you. It was your laugh.
Oh gosh. He thinks I'm funny.
No, yeah, no, 100%. And one thing I noticed like weaved in this manifestation when I asked you is the word trust, and it popped up when you were speaking about the youth. It popped up when you were saying, I did the self work, I did the intuitive work, I did, I'm connected in prayer and with God and self healing. Trust is huge, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Trust, there's like trust in a higher power,
Mhm.
trust in myself, trust that I have a really strong belief that everything is working out for me. And it actually comes from a sacred scripture that all things are working together for our good. And I cultivated that belief when I was a single mom. This is working out for me. This is working out for me. Before I even knew what personal development was, before I knew that personal development was also paraphrasing this scripture, that was a belief I had. And it's served me quite well, that when I'm in the crux of life or circumstances seem chaotic or I don't have what I desire yet, I trust.
It's yeah, it's so important. And yeah, so that in a sense would be, if we would explain to people what manifestation is like, as you were speaking, I was thinking some people might see it, oh, well, I do that in prayer, or, it's a conversation I have with God.
Yeah.
Um, and I do think in a sense, as I think about it now, it is the same, one and the same. I think maybe some people spin it more as, manifestation maybe being more spiritual work, where other
Mhm.
people would say deep prayer is more, Christian or religion. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
it's trust, belief, faith, and realizing that I think it is our own it is our own creation. It's our thoughts and our feelings that have created this. Like, life is not just happening to us, right? It's
Mhm.
happening through us. That's the
Yes.
big mind shift that people need to make.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I also like to say that aligned action activates the actualization of our desires and our dreams, meaning that it's us taking aligned action that activates these things coming into fruition. Because I find a lot of people, when it comes to either manifestation in the spiritual world or prayer in the
Mhm.
faith-based world, is they forget about the part that's our part.
Yes. Hmm.
And so, there's a scripture that says faith without works is dead, meaning we have to combine our faith with action. And that is what creates. And I believe our action, I like to say, moves the hand of the creator, where it's like you're showing God, like, I'm serious, I'm doing the thing. Oh,
Mhm.
meet me halfway. And then we see the miracles and the manifestations come into fruition. But it's when we sit on our hands and wait for the man to land on the doorstep, or wait for the opportunity to land on the doorstep, that we were like, why isn't it working? Well, you got to get up and do something.
Right. Well, okay, so let's take that. Can you give me an example of some of the women that you worked with that you had to maybe perhaps remind them of that, like whether they were very faith-based or spiritually based, and saying, "Hey, Cassandra, I'm doing all the work, but you know, nothing's happening." Or is there an example of one specific client that you worked with that you were like, "Man, this is magic. I'm loving this."
Yes. Oh my, as soon as you mentioned that, I instantly thought of a client I worked with a couple of years ago. And she had been married and divorced twice, but she still desired a partner. I think she was in her 50s, maybe 60, and she still desired a partner. However, she was praying for a partner, but she wasn't positioning herself for a partner. And when I say positioning herself for a partner, I mean going somewhere and being seen so people know that she exists in the world.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you're not
So
going to manifest somebody sitting in your condo or your apartment. Yeah.
no, not at all. And so I encouraged her to just be open. And we started with when she goes to the grocery store, when she would go and have her car serviced, be open, notice the synchronicities, notice the signs. And what happened is she actually started attracting men at the grocery store at the car when she was getting her car service. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is real. She was like, Casandra, I met a man at the auto place when I was getting my car service. I was like, I'm not surprised because you're open, you're aware, you're noticing. But it's when we are expecting things to just land on our lap that we miss things that were available for us if we just were present and paying attention and moving, being in action.
That's another very good point, is sort of the power of awareness, I think, is what you're bringing into this. It's sort of like, again, it relates to intentionally going through life. It's, it's like when you buy the white Honda Civic, all you see is the white Honda Civics on the road, right? And so,
Yes.
yeah, you can't just go through life just in a daydream, hoping something's going to land for you.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
So
Okay,
many
so
people live in autopilot.
yeah. So that is basically what you mean about being in alignment towards your goal, is being aware of the potentiality that you have every single time you walk out the door. But then,
Yes.
then there's a difference between how would I explain this? Obsessing about it. It's sort of like, okay, this morning when I go out the door, if I don't meet, I'm getting the oil change.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
getting like, and then she'd come back to you kind of going, okay, it didn't happen. Like,
Well,
explain that.
And that's the nuance part. So when I say being present and aware, it's not to look for, is it working? Is it happening right now? It's just a noticing. It's an awareness. And so, for instance, I like to start with telling people to pick a color for the day and just notice how many times you see that color, because it turns your conscious mind on so that you're actually being more present and aware. But it also gets you out of the whole worry, fear, doubt mode of, is it working? Is it working? Is it working? Because it gets nuanced, and you can get yourself caught up in looking for, is it working? What we want to look for is more so of like, it's working and I trust it's unfolding, not is it working and I'm so attached to it that I'm actually repelling it away from me. That's where it gets nuanced. And so you want to be in a very detached state where you're not so attached to the result that you desire, where every time you're practicing being present and aware, it's with the attachment of, is this going to be the moment? Is this going to be the thing? Is this going to be the time? Is this going to be the connection? Instead, looking at everything's unfolding. So for instance, when I was dating, I knew I was intentionally dating. However, I didn't meet every potential person. Is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? I looked at it as, I'm honing my skill. I'm developing conscious communication. I'm learning how to trust myself more. And so I looked at it as a journey. And then by the time my husband came, I had developed all of these beautiful things with myself, my emotional intelligence, my self-trust, being able to discern what's right for me or not. And so it's really detaching from the outcome and looking at it as a journey and allowing things to unfold for you.
So I'm going to ask you, how emotionally intelligent was your husband when you met him?
Very.
Great.
I told him when we met that I was practicing sexual abstinence until I was confident and for sure that whoever was meant to be with me was the person. And he honored it. He respected it. In fact, there was times when we were dating, I tried to seduce the man because I was he was like, Cass, I respect you. I don't feel like it's time yet. That let me know he has such strong self-discipline, like incredible self-discipline. And it led me to know I can trust him and I'm safe with him.
So nice. Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense from our earlier, the conversation that we had earlier about you attract what you're thinking about, sort of thing, what frequency you're on. So if he is someone who is emotionally, I mean, you are emotionally intelligent, so would he be. So
yeah. And it was interesting because it seemed that we had been in a similar journey around the same time. He was kind of tired of what was out there. And he said he actually said a prayer like, God, I'm ready for my person. And so I feel like energetically there was something happening at the same time with us. And then it was just our frequency that attracted each other to each other.
Nice. And how, may I ask how your son, like how the whole family like adapted?
So my son was a little hesitant at first. And he, at the time, I think my son was 10. My son is 19 now. He'll be 20 this year. So I think he was 10 when I met my husband. And I think he just got so used to it being me and him. And so he was a little leery, but eventually he came around and warmed up. And when they're around each other, I feel like I'm the outsider in the room. They're both, they think the same. My husband's an engineer. My son is majoring in biomedical chemical engineering. Like they have that very logical brain. So they're so much alike. It's hilarious. And my bonus son, my husband's son, we both have one son each. He's a couple years younger than my son. And I fell in love with him the moment I met him. Like, I just knew that, like, I felt like he's my son. It doesn't feel like he's just this person I know. Like, I felt like, oh my gosh, I love him like my own. So
how wonderful. You don't hear that often. I mean, that blended family working so well. So that's so nice to hear that it is possible.
And it was something I prayed for. I wrote down, I had the inevitable list, and I said, he can only have one child because I only have one child.
Yeah. But really, like, I mean, I think you're describing the power of intention. I mean, like, people don't realize their power.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. Like, I literally feel like everything I said, I even said simple things like, well, I want him to be handy because just in case, everything, he's handy. He's more financially savvy than I am. And he helped me throughout the years learning more about investments. Like, everything I said, it came into fruition.
Wow. Well, I mean, I sure hope that gives, our audience a lot of hope, because I think a lot of people feel very helpless in that realm of, like, the victims, right? Like, I am a victim of my life, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So would you say that's one of your like, main skills is sort of allowing people to see their potential? And
Oh yeah.
okay, tell us.
I feel like I have this gift to help people see themselves the way that God sees them, which is really their power, their ability to create. And I often talk about how we are the only beings on this planet that get to create the way we do. And really just showing people like how powerful we are truly. And sometimes we just forget because of circumstances and life. But when people can just wake up to that power they have inside it, it's like, I call it a whole new woman, which is the name of one of my signature offers, a whole new woman. It's like a whole new woman emerges because she sees who she really is. And then she's like, oh my gosh, I really can go out there and create the life, love, and legacy of my dreams. It was me all along.
Yeah, the inner child, who always been there, always. Yeah, nice. Okay, well, do you want to tell us another example of one of your, masteries of client success?
Yes. So I worked with a client, was this a year ago? And this story, I love this story because when she first came to me, she was straight up. She said, I'm going to tell you right now, I've been married and divorced twice. And that love stuff, my heart is closed to love. She was like, but this is what I want to do with you.
Can I just interrupt you 1 second? Because I have realized this myself. And actually, the podcast is coming out before this one airs, is about, I spoke to another therapist, and the discussion was so bang on in terms of, we attract the people in our worlds with the same sort of problems that we have. And I mean, coaches, mentors, therapists, we're not God. We
Right.
struggle as well. And we've had experiences that, you know, have made us grow tremendously. And that is why those people are coming into your world, your office, your online space, is because
Yeah.
you have lived through that experience quite often, and you are
Mm.
able to guide them. You have that slight difference. You know,
Yeah.
you're a little bit ahead of what they
Yeah.
are. And so it's just beautiful. Like, it's what you like, a woman divorced, you know, a woman who sort of at one point gave up in love,
Mm-hmm.
which is where you were. And
Mm-hmm.
so of course she walks in your door, right? Now, sorry,
Yeah.
continue. I just wanted
No,
to.
I love that you mentioned that, because for me, it would take me being where I am to have the confidence and the conviction of like, I have no worries about this one. I'm like,
Exactly.
girlfriend, it's good. It's all good. We got you.
Yeah, yeah. You came to me for a reason. 100%. Yeah.
Well, it was interesting because I worked with her for about a year. So she started off with a 3-month contract. And for the first 3-month contract, she just wanted to work on her leadership. She had a leadership role. She was in tech. And she also wanted to kind of break out of her shell and travel more. Well, after that 3 months, we renewed, and she wanted to do some more work on going out of the country. She realized, I've had this dream of living in another place. And I don't know, for some reason, I've just kind of said that maybe it's too late, or maybe this is just a crazy dream. And she started casually asking me questions about, well, how did you get to where you're at now with this love thing? Like, I noticed this opening happening with her.
Mm.
So we continued like focusing on the lifestyle and things like that, but she would occasionally ask me questions about love and relationships. So I noticed like, something's happening here.
Mm-hmm. Something's cracking open.
Yes. And so she wanted to renew again for another 3 months. And this time she explicitly said, I'm ready to work on this love thing. And I was like, see, I knew.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
So by
And
the time we had worked together, she had moved to another country, attracted someone there, and she's living her best life.
awesome. Where'd she go?
She went to oh my gosh, it starts with a P. Not Poland. Portugal.
Portugal. Nice.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
I
Oh,
was like, oh my, it was just, it's, to me, when I see these transformations, it's so incredible to witness, because you see who they are when they come through the virtual door, but then when they exit and like they're in the location, or they're in the relationship, or they're having the success in their business, whatever it looks like, it's like, oh my gosh, like I literally witnessed this whole
oh.
evolution of her.
There's nothing, I think you and I share this, nothing that lights our worlds up as much as that. You know, it's
Right.
just like, oh, it's why we do the work.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I also like the way you didn't push her. You know, you
No.
saw that in her, like, you know, in a distance, it's like, this woman wants to crack open something, but you know, you didn't force her. You just let it
No.
come organically. And that's another reason why it worked out so well.
Yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that she came telling me that for a reason. And I knew that deep down, that's not what she wanted, but her hurt and her wounding was speaking for her at that time, saying like, I don't know about that love stuff. And I'm like, but you wouldn't have said that if deep down, that's not what you wanted. And so because I was aware of that, I kind of like, I was consciously noticing things, but also allowing her to guide what she wanted to focus on. And it ended up unfolding.
Yeah.
It was inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, what else do you want to share with us before we leave? Is there anything in particular about the work you do?
Yeah, I think one thing that stands out to me is just being a woman in leadership. And it's a conversation I've been having more on my platforms, because as I have been talking more about being a woman in leadership who has all these different roles, being a mother, being a wife, and also having these big dreams, and really going back to my own core foundation of like, who am I with myself? Like, what's my relationship like with myself as I am wanting to lead a mission and wanting to be a good partner and be a supportive mother and things like that. And so it's something that I've been bringing back to the forefront about women, like making sure that you're not, I know that some people talk about feminine and masculine energetics,
Right.
but I like to say yin and yang, or the left and right hemisphere, but just making sure that you're checking in with yourself and your relationship with yourself while you're doing these big things. Because I have found a lot of women start leaning more into the masculine and leadership, and it does affect your relationships. And I'll be transparent. I saw myself trending that way in my business initially, because a lot of the business teachings I was receiving when I first started my coaching company was the old school marketing and the old school way of doing things. And I found myself getting out of alignment with myself, and it was affecting my relationship. And so for me, it's beyond like what I'm noticing. I also experienced it.
Yeah.
And I had to adjust that and get myself back into alignment. And I did notice a beautiful ripple effect where things in my relationship improved again. And I'm noticing I'm approaching my work from my intuition again. And so it's just something to think about when you're in different leadership roles and leading something.
No, I think you're making a very good point. It's something that we're not taught. Definitely when it comes to relationships either. I mean, that would have just been such a pearl of knowledge when, when even myself, when I stepped into my marriage at, 27, 28, and just this whole, yeah, I mean, because at that age, well, I mean, we're all taught and conditioned by our parents is like work, work, work. And your work is, I mean, they want us to be independent, of course, but that balance between, like you say, yin, yang, feminine and masculine energy, it's so easy for us as young women to step too much into the masculine energy and forget, who we are as women. So,
and it really, like, it can be so detrimental for us in so many different capacities, our relationships, our well-being, like so many different things. And I see it a lot happening. And it's something that I just feel so like my heart feels led to speak about it more, because I'm seeing so many women talking about burnout, separating from their partners, getting divorced, and it's all coming down to who they were being because of their businesses or their careers. And I'm like, man, it doesn't have to be this way though.
yeah, that beautifully said. Well, where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
I love that. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and then I dabble on YouTube and TikTok, but I'm primarily on Facebook and Instagram at this time, but you can find me on the other platforms also.
And is there any particular offers or work that you're doing that you would like to tell our listeners about that they can consider?
Sure. So I'm currently running a Return to Her program, which is my Reclaim Your Power feminine womanhood program. And I also have a Whole New Woman private coaching and mentorship. That's by application only. And so you could private message me on Facebook to learn more about how to apply for that. And then if you go to my website, there's a la carte master classes that you can purchase.
Perfect.
Thank you for asking.
No, yeah, absolutely. Your energy is beautiful, and like I say, if your laugh is addictive, and you bring such beautiful energy into this space. So that's why I wanted to have you on. So, and
thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
It's the last day of February as we as this interview is happening, and I recognize that it's Black History Month. Is there a particular woman that you think of or look up to in recognition of?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Maya Angelou. I quote her often in my work. I Know Why a Cage Bird Sings was one of the books that really gave me permission to do this work, because I saw how open and vulnerable and transparent she was about her own traumas during a time where that was like a big no-no. You don't do that, especially in the Black community. I was conditioned that way too, where what happens in this house stays in this house. I heard that a lot growing up, even if it was wrong, if it was harmful, if it was traumatic. And so I remember reading her book and felt so much relief that I don't have to hold on to this and I can free myself from this. And so Maya Angelou is one of my all-time favorites.
Wow, what a great answer. I love the title of that book. A Cage Bird. I've never heard of it, but like,
oh, you've got to read it.
I
is
do.
Probably like, it's so powerful. Of course, she's sharing some traumatic experiences, but she had a sexual trauma happen as a little girl, and she stopped speaking for a period of time. And could you imagine the great Maya Angelou, who became this iconic historical figure, not speaking, and then who she became? It's so powerful to see, like, it doesn't matter what you've experienced in life, that you still have an opportunity to be who you were meant to be.
Oh my gosh, that breaks my heart. Yeah, as a past career as a speech pathologist, I did work with some new children, and like when you think about what the body does in order to protect itself, I always find it's amazing.
Yeah.
A young girl shuts off her speech. Like, it's incredible.
It is.
So, well, thank you so much, Casandra. It was just such a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Okay, well, for everyone else, I wish you a great week, and we'll see you here next week again. Bye-bye. Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.